you doing, Mike AM? It's a good day for a podcast. He said, yeah, let's do it. I said, fuck yeah, okay, let's do it. And that's how it happened, and it's happening now.
You know what? I'm just going to jump into the first thing.
Okay.
No.
Shoot. No.
No, let's get to that later. That's crazy. Let's talk about music cognition.
Okay.
The program you're in, it's what comes to mind is kind of music therapy, but what differentiates what you're doing from, say, a music therapy focus?
Well, I would say, actually, that music therapy, if you were looking at sort of like a Venn diagram, or better yet, a bubble within a bubble. So music therapy is one of the ways that music cognition is being used. The field of music cognition is larger in that it works, it studies how music and the brain, I don't want to say interact, but how they affect each other. So how music affects the brain, right? In terms of health, in terms of how our biorhythms change when we listen to music, all the different aspects of the brain when it's being subjected to music, or also when a musician is playing or composing, how their brain changes. So all of those things is, when you start looking at the field, you could look at, for example, I'm interested in audiology. That's hearing. A lot of times when people look at hearing, they think, oh, it's the ear. But it's not. A big part of hearing is your brain. It's how your brain processes signals that are coming through your ears. And there's a whole field of, how does music fit into all of this? How do the frequencies that we hear, how does our brain process or know what frequencies we're listening to? But then on the flip side, I look at musicians. Musicians are surrounded by music, loud music sometimes, loud music often. How does that affect the musician's hearing, right? And we look at things like tinnitus, which is something that I'm very...
Oh, have I been saying it wrong my whole life?
No, okay, yeah. So let's talk about that because that's very interesting. So it's like colloquially, the way everybody says it is tinnitus, right? But then when you start studying it, you realize, wait, all of the scientists say tinnitus. And I think, me personally, I think it comes from the European sort of pronunciation.
Yeah.
And, whether you look at it from a Latin or, with the French, everybody that I've spoken to with a European background says tinnitus. But in the studies at McMaster, they say tinnitus. And everywhere when you're in the field, they say tinnitus. But I still will say tinnitus because I feel like it's part of the language. That's how people pronounce it that aren't in that, specialty.
One in Rome.
Kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm not, either way is fine. But the idea there is, for the longest time, people thought, oh, it's because I'm losing my hearing. Well, that's part of the story. But really, tinnitus is the brain, right? It's the brain producing that sound that people hear. So I guess just to explain it, tinnitus is when you hear that ringing in your ear, right? Sometimes people hear like a static or different sounds that are produced.
Yeah.
And a lot of musicians have it. For me, it's become personal because as a bass player, obviously, I hang out with drummers as well, right? It's kind of like a partnership rhythm section thing. I always
say I've got problems with my right ear because traditionally you put the bass player on the hi-hat side of the drummer. So.
Yes, exactly. And so further to that, you have drummers who love their cymbals, high frequencies, right? And there's a tendency to for drummers to have tinnitus, right? And so the thing, though, that really disheartened me was I have friends that have 2 or 3 tones ringing, different frequencies ringing in their head.
Wow.
And so they'll perceive it as one tone in one ear, in the right ear, let's say, and then 2 dissonant tones in their left ear. And it's like, it's enough to drive you crazy. Like, it's really, really not a joke. It's a very serious condition. And so out of curiosity, I went to all these websites that deal with, forums, whatever, that deal with tinnitus. And there are people who are suicidal for how bad it is. And they really cannot solve the problem because it's coming from your brain. Your brain is filling in the frequencies that you're missing. There's a theory also that, like, let's say you have a certain frequency that you've lost because of loud noises or whatever. The nerve endings that are, like, when you in your cochlear, you have, when you spread it out, it's all the different frequencies are all lined up. Okay, so it's like a bunch of rows of frequencies. And when you lose one, then the rows on each side go, oh, okay, well, we're going to fill in that gap. And they start firing. And they'll fire without the proper or the usual stimulation, which is sound. So when there's no sound, these guys will fire. And then your brain is going to go, oh, okay, that's the sound that I should be perceiving. So then it just perceives that sound, even though there is no real stimulation, or there's no real existence of that sound, right? So you're not hearing it. If somebody else is sitting next to you, they don't hear the sound. It's all it's your head.
Ah.
So, so all that to say that this is something that people consider to be a hearing issue, but it's a brain issue. So just to look at, like, McMaster's program, half of it I study music, so I play my bass, I study theory, I study music history, all the typical music courses, ear training, that kind of stuff that you would expect in a music program. The other half is the psychology, neuroscience kind of courses, right? So human development, human learning and memory, all the different basic courses that teach you about how the brain works. And then from there, you can go into a specialty, and it could be you decide that music therapy is for you. So, like, this semester, I'm taking a music therapy research course. What that is last semester I took the intro to music therapy. So to explain to me, what is music therapy? What do they do? And music therapy is, to me, it's very sad that it's not more commonplace in our health system. Because, for example, when your body, when you listen to music, the human body is kind of like predisposed to matching whatever rhythm that it's hearing outside. So it could be a metronome, could be music, could be like, drums, it could be just anything with a steady beat, for example. So, you have friends that maybe are going to see a physiotherapist, trying to learn to walk again, or, they have difficulty walking. And so part of that difficulty comes from like trepidation, like your brain is just, I'm afraid it's going to hurt, I'm going to fall, I'm going to, all those fears, right? Which makes you walk with caution, and it slows down your progress as you're trying to get that therapy to get better.
Right.
Well, if you take those same people and you play music, or even take a metronome outside of them, right? Just have them listen to that and tell them to walk to that pace. All of a sudden, it's like your brain just focuses on that, and then next thing you know, the person is walking steadily with less hesitation. And I was watching this film where they were showing that kind of effect, and you had a person walking with a cane, and they were walking very slowly, and then they had the metronome, and they just kept upping it a little bit at a time, and within 45 minutes, the person was walking without a cane. So I'm babbling now.
No, I'm just trying not to interrupt it. I come up with things that I want to ask, and I don't want to derail this train of thought.
Well, so I guess, what I'm trying to say is that, because I would like to talk a little bit more about music therapy later, but just because it's all the evidence I've seen. So right now I'm looking at the research part of music therapy. And what that is it's showing the research that's been done, some of the research that's still needed, and just to get funding, get recognition, gets, somebody to look at this and say...
They need more hard evidence that it's effective.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's like a major hurdle that people like yourself need to address.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is that when I started studying music cognition, it never occurred to me to go into music therapy. It just wasn't my thing, that wasn't something that I was interested in. Now that I've taken the courses, I'm like, so, wow, this is great. More people should know about this. And why aren't our hospitals taking this in? Every hospital should have music therapists on staff. It would just really, really accelerate people's recovery.
Have you seen that documentary? It was a Netflix documentary. I meant to look up the name of it. I think it was something like Alive Inside or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where that's incredible. I think it focused mostly on bringing back people with dementia.
Right.
And how they could play them songs from their youth, and it just instantly snaps people who have never even said words or even responded to their name, and all of a sudden they're moving around, they're smiling, and some of them even communicating to some degree.
Singing along with the words, the lyrics, I think that's why a lot of attention is being right now placed on music cognition. It's like all of a sudden people are noticing what it is. I think because there's two areas where there's a lot of progress being made. One is with people with Alzheimer's or dementia, and the other one is with kids with autism. Music seems to draw attention, I guess, is the word. It makes people focus, So the kids who are on the autism spectrum have a challenge oftentimes focusing on one thing. And when the music therapist plays music, all of a sudden it's like, oh, the child is not only interested, but oftentimes these kids have a very high degree of ability in music. So that's another question people are asking. Why is that? Why is it that, when there are maybe other deficiencies or other areas of illness in the brain, why is it that music seems to always come through? So in the case of dementia, you might forget almost everything. Like you were saying, people were in a catatonic state, right? And then you play music that is importantly emotionally attached to them. Like you were saying, music that is, they say it's like the years between like 14 and 22. So usually your adolescence, you're going through a lot of, emotional ups and downs. You go in college, your friends, you're listening to what your friends are listening to. You're finding your own identity. Music is a huge part of a lot of our lives during that phase. And so what happens is, even later in life, when you forget everything else, you play that music that was being played during that period. All of the emotional memory comes out as well, right? And so what they were finding was that music affects many different parts of your brain. And so whereas some things will, like, I don't know if you know that the hippocampus has always been said to be, the holder of long-term memories. But what they found was with music, when you're listening to music, there's different areas that light up in your brain. And some of those, like the emotional part and, maybe, I don't know, the smell, the environment that you were in while you were listening to that music, all of that gets retained. So when certain parts of your hippocampus die off or start, deteriorating, whatever, it seems like when you play that music, all those other areas that were being touched are still healthy, and those kick in. And so together they start, they remind you of what you were trying to remember, what was going on during that time, Wow. It's fascinating because, like, I used to wonder, there's this song, so, Queen and David Bowie's Under Pressure. Yeah. For whatever reason, every time I hear that song, I remember being in high school, young high school, like 14, being on my friend's bus. She was a bus driver. Like my friend's mother was a bus driver. And the bus was empty. We were driving around, and her mother was blasting the radio, and Under Pressure was playing, and my friend and I were just, and so now I get that memory. It's like vivid.
Well, that's a great song to have that memory with. Mm-hmm. What about people who are left cold by music? You know, a percentage of the population that doesn't respond emotionally to music in any way.
Yeah.
And do you know any of the
so
science behind that?
Me personally, no. There is a science behind it. I know because they touched it in one of my intro classes, but they didn't delve into it. And I was curious about that as well. So I don't know the answer to that, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, there is a subset of the population that is completely unmoved by music.
Really? Wow.
It's a small population.
I guess I won't speculate as to what could be the cause of that, since...
Oh, you can speculate.
You can, yeah. Like, do you think... It just seems to me like it's such a major part of the human experience that, you know, perhaps it could even be... Like, I don't want to be so bold as to say someone is, like, damaged who has this, because that seems insensitive. But is there a possibility that that's kind of like a psychological blocking, like maybe?
Yeah,
like
totally.
What
could be?
Yeah, I don't know. You can ask one of your professors and come back.
Yeah, I mean,
about it.
You know, what they did say was there is no music center. Like there is no, like everybody was thinking, well, maybe, you know, there's a place in your brain that is dedicated to music and that place is damaged. And the answer is no, you know? And the answer is no. It's just that, like I said, you know, music is special because it affects so many areas of the brain.
So I guess through MRIs and stuff, I picture that scene in the film version of This Is Your Brain on Music, where they're getting Sting to improvise and then also sing a song that he knows inside of the MRI, and they're
it's called a functional MRI.
Okay,
yeah.
What's the difference?
So an MRI will show you the picture of the brain structure or anything, right? Like whatever, you could do an MRI of your back, of your whatever. So think of it as a different sort of X-ray.
Okay.
Okay, it looks at the inside and it takes like structural pictures. A functional MRI is actually looking at sort of where the activity in your brain is taking place.
So that's a different
device. So you're awake and you're doing something. You're specifically doing something, and they're monitoring the oxygenation in your brain. And so they'll see, oh, look, these are, you've seen the red spots or you've seen those kind of pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they when they do the functional MRI, they can see, oh, look, that person's brain was being activated in the left, temporal lobe or whatever, or, that kind of thing. So that's how they figure out not what areas are responsible for doing something. What they detect is when you're doing this is the part of your brain that is energized. It's a fine nuance, but it's like they can't necessarily, for a lot of stuff, they can't say, oh, this is, your brain is doing this. It's causing this to happen. But they can say when this is happening, this part of your brain is lighting up, right?
Right. So, okay, I get that.
Which is fascinating that we can even, that's a large part of why the cognitive field is now being able to run, because they have these tools that can tell you so much more than they used to be able to find out, right? So
then it must be especially difficult because going back to getting funding for music therapy and such, in order to prove that something works, you need to repeat it over and over again and prove a cause and effect. And, if all you have is this, like, this is lighting up, and that means probably that's doing it, but we don't even know that for certain.
Exactly.
We just know that this part oxygenates every time this happens.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they find different ways of approaching the same problem or approaching the same question to see if they can narrow it down to, okay, now can we say that that actually does this?
There's a guy I know, he's a percussionist, but I think recently he's gotten into like sound healing. What level of merit is there to something like that?
You know, the truth is, I no longer speak about whether I believe something works or something doesn't work, because what I've learned is that the body is remarkable and the brain is still a huge mystery. And there are so many things that impact us that we are not aware of. Like, we literally just don't know, right? And I've had personal experiences with different things like energy, for example. If you would have asked me, I don't know, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you know, if I believed that this X could happen, I would have said no. Because energy, you can't see energy, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. You see the effects of energy or whatever, but you don't see. And we know that in Eastern medicine, they work a lot with energy and chi, right? In the Western world, most of us go, well, yeah, I don't get it, right? Mm-hmm. So once you start seeing effects of things that you can't see, it makes it very difficult to then go, oh yeah, no, I don't believe in that because I don't see it, or, you know, I don't understand it. So now I'm very cautious about saying what I believe works and what I believe doesn't work. I just don't know. I hope that people find different ways that things do work. And of course, I do believe that not everything works on everyone, right? Everybody is different, and therefore, you know, what might work on one person may not work on the next person. It doesn't mean that that technique doesn't work or that philosophy doesn't work. It could be just that, you know, it didn't work for that one person or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
You had another question.
I did. I mean, I have many. Life is all about questions.
Mm-hmm. He is pondering.
Yeah. Look at the card. When in doubt, look at the card.
Okay.
In the last episode of the Michael A.M. radio show on the internet, I haven't plugged my own podcast in this one yet. You're already listening to it. Why would I do that? Jose and I was asking him about all the travel he's done. He counted that he's been to probably 14 countries, although he may have left some out. And we were talking about when you go to another country and inevitably, as a musician, end up jamming with someone, because that's something that you just kind of need to do, you know, once you've been bitten by the bug. You can't go somewhere for 10 days and not scratch that itch, right? We were talking about how much you can almost discover about a place and learn about a person through music, and how that's like a language in itself.
Okay.
Cool, right?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. I would say that there is a lot that you can learn about somebody when you're jamming with them. Sometimes about how they behave, like how well they listen. How, I don't know, I guess confident they are. How much control they want to have. Those kind of things. But I think also, you know, how they play tells you a little bit about how they communicate or what moves them in, right?
There's also kind of a tell as to what's going on inside. You might find out that, you know, someone's not, like you were saying about control or confidence. Sometimes the least confident people might be like the most incredible musicians, because that's, you know, an outlet where they feel safe for that. And that's not just music, but many arts and sometimes even sports or whatever. You know, you'll get these people who just sometimes can't even make eye contact. Yeah. But when you get them in their element, they're suddenly a fish in water.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about playing music. How long have you been playing bass for?
Wow, that's a story. I've been playing bass for not that long, considering, but 9 years. 9 years.
Did you play anything before that?
Well, so when I was a kid, my parents first put me in violin. Yes, I was 6, and I played the violin. Yeah. I didn't take to it. I didn't really enjoy it. I don't know why exactly. Maybe it was the standing. I don't know. Maybe because it sounded horrible because, whatever. But for whatever reason, I said, no, I'm not really. So we tried switching to piano. So I played piano for a while. It also didn't really move me. But I played it for whatever number of years in school. And then what I really wanted to play was the drums, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, but my parents were like, no, just no. So, So then when I got to high school, I played the percussion. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Okay, I can do this, right? And I wanted to go into... I loved the timpani, for example. Timpani was my favorite. And I think that now looking back, the reason I loved it so much was the combination of rhythm and pitch, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it gave me so much more than just, let's say, snare, Anyways, and so, and I wasn't really into the mallet instruments for whatever reason. Like, I could play them, the xylophone, probably because I knew what the notes were because of my piano background. But I wasn't really feeling, it wasn't moving me in any way. So it was interesting. So I thought, okay, I'm going to, be a timpani player when I grow up. This is what I'm going to do. So, I'm originally from Montreal, so I wanted to be the first female, timpani player in the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. That was my goal. Yeah, it was clear this is what I was going to do. And then my mother was like, yeah, no. Okay, so you're going to learn business. You're going to go and study computer science, and you're going to make some money, right? You're going to have a life, and you're going to have, I'm not going to have to worry about you. And my brother and my sister, who were older than me, did go into music. And so, so when it came to me, she was like, no. So I studied computer science, and I dropped the music thing altogether. And I worked in a corporate world after my graduation. But I always knew when I was studying computer science that this was not my thing. It was something I could do. Mm-hmm. It was something I loved solving problems. I still love solving problems. That has not gone away. But the whole, I don't know, I guess it was the detailed work, the syntax errors, all of that stuff. It just wasn't, But she was right. I was able to make some money, right? And so I worked in the corporate world for a while, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm really not enjoying this. But I decided I was going to save some money until I could do what I really wanted to do. And it wasn't until later that I started playing with a friend of mine that I met through I was working at a bank, and I met a friend who said, do you play music? And I said, oh, no. No, I used to, but I don't anymore. And I really, I wasn't kidding. This is how I felt.
Wow.
It was like a part of my brain had shut down my whole desire to be a musician, And I think when you love something so much and you are not allowed to do it, I think that you just kind of repress it. It's kind of like maybe that's...
Repressed. That was the word I was looking for earlier.
Oh, okay.
And you reminded... Because that seems like that wall that might, prevent someone from enjoying music.
Right. No, I see what you're saying.
So what I was trying to say there is that it could be... could it be... I'm not even trying to pose a theory, but just a question.
Like they had some traumatic experience...
Yeah, that just said, this, we don't do this. And then, whatever's behind this wall is just, we don't want to touch it.
Right. So we're not going to speculate because we don't know.
Yeah.
But I see where you're going with that. And in my case, I would say that I felt like that is what happened. With me, I continued to listen to music and enjoyed listening, but I did not consider myself a musician. And so what happened was I just when he asked me, I was like, yeah, no, not really. You know, I used to play percussion when I was younger, but I don't do that anymore. So he said, well, listen, if I get some musicians together, do you want to come jam? And I was like, no, okay, maybe I'll come and I'll sing because I can't play anything. So he was like, okay. So he got a few people together, and then next thing I knew, I got a phone call, and it was like, okay, do you want to come jam? Okay. So I went, and it was like, you know, one of those where you have sheet music, you have the chord changes, and, you know, everybody just kind of follows the chord changes and whatever. But it was fun, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just singing whatever. And I really started to enjoy, again, the environment. And then one day the bass player didn't show up. And they said, well, we can't continue without a bass player. And I thought, you know, I've always been interested in
That looks pretty easy.
No, I didn't think it was easy, but I did like the fact I've always listened to the bass because I've always listened to groove, right? I've always been like, wow, this is... so when the bass player was playing, somehow, I did a thing where I was singing and then there was a bass player to my right and the guitar player to my left. And I remember always being drawn to what the bass player was doing, you know? So I thought, okay, I can't play bass, but, you know, I may as well, like, I want to see what this is about, right? So when my friend said, okay, somebody, one of you guys have to pick up the bass. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So he said, great. So I picked up the bass and I said, what do I do with it? Like, you know, I wasn't, even with the violin thing, like that didn't take at all, right? And it was a Suzuki method, so I didn't know the names of the strings. I didn't know the names of the notes at all, like nothing, right? It was all position knowledge. So he said, okay, put your finger here and then, you know, hit that note for a while. And then when we change chords, put your finger here. So I had no idea, you know, it wasn't like, oh, here's an E and here's an E. No, it was just like, put your finger there and whatever. I said, okay, I could do this. So we started playing the song and I started like plucking the bass. And then I just really got, like all of a sudden, it was like I was home. And I started grooving the hell out of those two notes, you know? And my friend was just like, what the hell? Like, oh my God, you're a bass player. Right? He's like, it's just natural. Like, this is you. So, and I had that was the most fun I had at a jam up to that point, you know? And so I was wondering, I was like, oh, wow, you know, could it be true? So then, of course, my nephews were playing Rock Band and Guitar Hero. So I went over to my sister's house and started playing with them and selecting bass just to see what would it feel like if I, you know, could I do this, right? And sure enough, it was like, oh, wow. Yeah, this totally feels like something I could do. And I went to the medium level and I went, you know, and I was just like, okay, I need to learn how to play the bass. So I went to Long and McQuaid's and I went, okay, so I want to learn how to play the bass. What do I need? So they said, okay, well, you need a bass. I said, yep. So I grabbed an Ibanez.
Yeah.
And this is at the rental department, right? So I grabbed an Ibanez and then I said, what else do I need? Well, do you have an amp? Nope. Okay, you need an amp. Okay, so I grabbed the amp. What else do I need? Do you have any patch cords or cables? And nope. So they gave me that. They gave me a strap. They gave me the whole thing. And I think it cost me like, I want to say like $60 a month. If that. $55, $60, whatever it was. And I was like, really? Okay. And so I rented it for, I think, 3 months. Went on YouTube, did that thing, you know, went to websites and learned like the proper way because I didn't want to develop bad habits. So I wanted to, you know, and then, I think it was 2 months after I had picked up the bass, that same friend said to me, okay, so the senior vice president wants to have a town hall. So, you know, all of his employees are going to be at this thing and he wants to have a music theme. I said, really? That sounds like a great idea. And he said, yeah, and he wants to have a house band. And I said, okay. And he said, yeah, and he asked me to put it together. I said, great. He says, do you think I should do it? I said, yeah. I said, okay. He came back the next day. He said, we need a bass player. And I said, okay. he says, well, will you do it? And I said, oh, come on. I just picked up the bass. Like I literally picked it up 2 months ago. I said, no, I can't, And he's like, no, but I got everybody. We really, really need a bass player. So I said, something in my head, a little voice was like, yeah, just do it. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And he said, great. I said, so who else is in the band? He says, well, right now it's just you and me. So I was like, oh, man. So we put a band together, and we played. My first gig was in front of 400 people.
What?
Yeah. And
nice.
So, and it was fun. And then after that, I just was like, okay, yeah, this feels good. This is what I want to do. And now I'm happy to say, now I can say, yeah, I'm a musician. This is what I do. So I guess fast forward, I ended up realizing that that's what I had been waiting for. That's what I wanted to do when I left my corporate job. And so I left for a year, and I did this sabbatical thing. And I said, I want to explore this music thing. And so I did that, and then I came back, and it was like, yeah, no, I can't go back to the corporate world. That's not who I am. That's not what I want to do, and whatever. And so we parted amicably. And then I went. And I turned around and I went to school, and that's why I'm on this journey now of, reinventing myself and going back to where I guess I left off when I was young. And just
wow,
yeah, just picking up that journey.
Just after a little hiatus.
Yeah.
That's so 9 years into your bass journey. And how long after you said or you realized I'm a bass player to when you kind of dropped everything for it?
I'm going to say, well, from the moment that I picked it up, I continued working in the corporate world for another 3-4 years, something like that. And what happened was, after I had been, so that band that we did the whole, house band thing for the town hall thing, we did that for 3 years in a row. And then I decided, so I was playing by position, right? I didn't know the names of the notes. I was sort of like learning everything by ear, right? And then I realized, okay, this is ridiculous. I need to learn. I need to learn how to play the bass like properly. And the first step, I guess, that I took towards that was the first bass that I bought. I took some lessons at Steve's Music. Yeah, so I basically studied. I learned a lot of stuff. I don't know if I should say his name on. Well, I won't say his name. He sold me my first bass, and he gave me my first bass lessons. He brought a book that he was a huge Victor Wooten fan, and Victor Wooten had written a book called The Music Lesson. And he said, "I want all
for any musician."
Yes, and he said he wanted all his students to read it. So he gave me a copy, which was very generous, and I read it. And he said, Victor Wooten's coming to Toronto, and he's going to give a clinic through Steve's Music. So he was asking his students if they wanted to come, and he was going to give a discount for the tickets, right? So I was like, okay. I didn't know who Victor Wooten was. I didn't, but I read the book, and I thought, oh, this is like really interesting. Yeah, I'd like to meet the person who wrote this book, So I went to the clinic, and then everybody had a chance to. So number one, I was really impressed with just really his energy. Victor has a great energy, and he was showing exercises. He was doing his thing, and then afterwards we were able to sort of talk to him for like 5 minutes each, right? And people go up and they get their book signed and all of that, right? And I spoke to him, and it was at that moment that I realized, because I said to him, like, look, I started this late, what can I do sort of to catch up to I really want to be a good bass player, and he said, well, look, you have life experience. These kids coming up, all they want to do is play fast. Their interest is in playing fast. You have a story to tell. focus on that, and it was just the way, yeah, exactly. He was just
Victor Wooten with the powerful knowledge. Oh my gosh.
And it was the way, I don't know, it was the way he spoke to me. And just the idea that it's really funny, when he talks to you and he's talking to you, there's all these people waiting in line, right? But he's talking to you. And at that moment I decided, yeah, you know what? He has this camp. I'm going to go check it out.
You went to the base camp.
I did.
Oh.
I did.
That's a week?
No. So me, oh my God, I had been playing a year and a half. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was in that mode. I really was in the mode of just do it, just do it, just do it. Something popped into my head. If I thought it was going to, give me more knowledge about music or further my quest, I was going to do it. So when I realized he had this camp and I had to apply, I just applied. It was 3 weeks.
What?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's like 3 weeks intensive, right? So, and it's a nature as well as base camp. So Victor has 3 different areas of, I guess, that you could call his passion. One is nature, obviously the base, and then the other one is martial arts. And
what martial arts does he practice?
I would say, if I had to say one, I would say probably like Wing Chun, but he's interested in like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's interested in a lot of different things. And so, yeah, so he in his camp, first of all, it is a camp. So you can go and you can tent it, or they do have like whatever you call those, like bunks or whatever, right? Where there's a bunch of beds and you can share. So, and they have great food, and like he's got this chef that comes. He's phenomenal. He loves music, so he goes there and he blasts his music every morning, and he cooks and fantastic food. Anyway, so that's neither here nor there. The point is that you go through these, they put you in these groups, and then you go through these classes while you're there. And you'll have a music class, which is maybe bass and maybe theory, that kind of thing. And then you'll have a nature class, which might be something about learning about tracking or learning about survival or, plants, medicinal plants. That kind of so it's completely different. And then in the mornings, he would have either yoga or Tai Chi or, something like that. And then he'd have a Wing Chun specialist. So it's an experience. Let me put it that way, Yeah. So, but the funniest thing was, I was at the camp, and I was one of the people with the least amount of playing experience. No, never mind. I was the person with the least amount of playing experience. And it was a good range of ages. I think it went from 14 to I want to say 65. The majority of the people there were between maybe 16 and 22.
And that 14-year-old probably just slapped the shit out of the bass, didn't he? Or she?
No. I think that 14-year-old. No, I think they had just recently started. I think they had been playing for 2 or 3 years, something like that. Yeah, but all that to say is that everybody was in a different place in their journey, and they all sort of met there, Mm-hmm. And so it was very interesting. But I can say that there were many moments of frustration because it was stuff that was going over my head. That I felt like, oh, what was I thinking? Coming here at this point, I should have waited till I, had played more and whatever. But, everything comes to you at the time that you need it,
Did you have an after school special moment with Victor where you're just like, I don't know if I'm meant to do this. And he's like, believe in yourself.
No, but well, you know what? Actually, maybe you could call it that. I think the moment that I remember was probably, yes, I was feeling very down on myself because I couldn't do anything that the other kids could do. But one of the things was, Victor had this thing where your group, so let's say, I don't know, you're like 15 people in the group or 12 people, whatever, he would give everybody an instrument that is not the bass. Keep in mind, this particular camp was bass players only. Okay, he does other camps with other musicians, but this one was bass players only. So he would, there would be a keyboard, there would be a triangle, there would be spoons, there'd be an upright bass, there'd be a guitar, there'd be like all kinds of different instruments, right? And I think there was one bass. And so what you'd have to do is somebody would start a groove, and then everybody had to just improvise, right? And then everybody had to take a solo on their instrument. And so then, we'd rotate after that. Everybody would move down one. And so one of the things that, and at the end of the 3 weeks, we did a performance in Nashville. So this is down in the States, right? This is near Nashville. So we went to Nashville and we'd have to do this performance. And
so is the camp kind of like out in... Nashville is kind of surrounded by a lot of boonies, right?
Exactly. So it's in one of the boonies.
In that wilderness area. Mm-hmm. It's so cool driving in. There's like these hills you roll over into the city.
Yeah. This one's about an hour west, I think west, like on the way to Memphis, right?
Okay, so I can picture like what the terrain is like.
Right.
It's very beautiful out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so at the end of it, we had this, he would have this space in Nashville and we would do a public concert, which is, always fascinating because you have like 30 bass players on stage.
Was that like a pub or a theater? Or...
It was a pub. It was, yeah.
Do you remember which one?
Damn it. No, I don't.
Was it...
No, I can't remember.
Was it on like the main strip or one of the cool side areas?
Side, yeah.
Was it on Printers?
No, it wasn't on Printers. I like Printers.
Yeah.
It's a cool place. No, so, for the life of me, I cannot remember now what it was called. But, yeah, so the point is that he would have us all up there and, he'd be with us playing. So you had 30 bass players. And then there was Jeff Coffin on saxophone. I think it was Derico Watson on drums. And he had his brother Joseph on keys. Oh. And that was it. It was all bass players, right? So when we were rehearsing, he would, so we were only, out of the 30, we were 5 women at the time. 5. I think there's a lot more women that go now, which is nice. But... so there were 5 women, and he would have us stand in the front, and all the guys would be in the back. And every time we were rehearsing, he'd be like, "Okay, Keiko, count us in." And the first time he did that, I was like, "What?" Okay, so I counted us in. And then the second time, it was like, "Keiko, count us in." Okay. So what was interesting was the very last day, my after-school special moment. The very last day as I was leaving, Victor said to me, he pulled me aside and he said, you're doing well. Continue. Like he said, you have excellent groove and you have excellent time. And I just looked at him and went, what? Oh, thank you. And he said, when we were doing that exercise with all of the, different instruments, whatever instrument you picked, except for the bass, because that's the intimidating one, right? Because you're supposed to know how to play that one. And so now you're terrified. Everything else, you let go because you're like, oh, I don't know how to play this
Obviously,
instrument.
I don't know how to play the spoons, so I'm just going to be silly with them.
I'm just going to go. Right. He said every single one you played in time and you had groove. All your souls. He said, so, really your battle is like with yourself and this bass, right? And he said, why do you think I had you count us in every time? Because you got time. And I was like, wow. Okay. And I did walk away with, okay, I have something that I can build on, right? It's not as useless as I felt so many times during those 3 weeks, feeling like I was lost, feeling like, wow, I don't have my basics down. I don't know the notes on my bass. there was a lot of things that I didn't have. But here were 2 things that I had that Victor Wooten told me I had that I could build on. And I walked away going, okay, now I got to build on the rest. Now I got to work on the rest, you know? So it was...
Those are the foundation, though. You know, if you can just lay down time and make the changes in the right spots. I mean, think about, what do you call it? I think her name's Darcy from the Smashing Pumpkins. Famously never recorded for the band. You know, they're just kind of like, we like you, you're a friend, and you know, you do this well enough, and probably also recording like that. There's a psychological element that some amazing musicians just can't overcome that, because
the red light syndrome.
I don't know if I might have heard that, but it's good. Thank you for reminding me. And you know, there's so many bass players. Michael Anthony from Van Halen, bum, 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 right? And it's like if
those bumps are in the right place,
exactly. So it's like if you have, like, there are people who have made careers off of just putting those bumps in the right place, and all everything on top of that is just, you know, for show, really. So that's...
Well, you know, the thing is, the truth is that, yes, what you're saying is true, and then there is the musical, I guess, the desire inside you that wants to express musically. And that ability to express is, I think, the freedom that we all seek. As a bass player, and especially seeing other people and what they were capable of, and what I was like, oh, wow, I want to play like them. And they weren't necessarily doing, you know, the wicked fast slapping, all of that, you know, chops, heavy stuff. They might be doing, you know, simple fills, but they were melodic. They might be, you know, doing a nice groove, but you know, they went places where your ear was like, oh, that sounded so great. Oh, I want to do that. You know, when I was in Nashville for the camp, I went to a couple of the clubs actually on Printer Street and Printer's Alley. That's what it was called. And I saw these funk bands, and the bass player would take these solos. So tasty.
That blues club with the balcony? That's my favorite place in Nashville. People just, when someone rips, they just start throwing dollar bills at them from the balcony.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was the first club I walked into the first time I went to Nashville. So that place has, you know, special
nice.
memories.
I went to a bunch of the lame ones on, what's the main street? Broadway.
On Broadway, yeah.
I'm not knocking Broadway. It's all right. You can tell that a lot of the people there would rather be somewhere else, like the people playing. True.
But what's fascinating about Nashville is that even the B or the C bands are just phenomenal, right? So talented. So talented. So, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, for me, that is still my goal, is to be able to, you know, play with freedom what I hear in my head or what I feel in my heart, like, you know, that ability. And I'm not there yet. I feel like, you know, what my experience with the Victor Wooten camp, with the Bass Nature camp, I did end up going again. And I've been to other camps as well, like several camps. I went through a phase where I wanted to get as much instruction from different people as possible, because I felt like I had not found the one instruction that was working for me. You know, I was getting sort of like nuggets of gold everywhere, right? So it was a matter of searching and taking what spoke to me and putting it in my pocket and going, okay, now I have something else. Now I have another tool, right?
But isn't that all there is? It's just like, you know, there's no, unless you're going to tell me that you've found it, but I would argue that learning anything, you're just picking up those gold nuggets, or, you know, even taking these big rocks of ore and finding the bits of gold in them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And refining that. And even, even kind of sifting through to find the stuff that you particularly like. Maybe gold's not your thing.
Yeah,
you know,
no, that's
maybe,
a good point.
Maybe you're more into silver. I like silver. I don't like the color of gold. It's tacky.
I like silver too, actually.
Right?
But yeah. I think that, that's a very good point. And I think that because at one point somebody was asking me whether I felt like I was maybe getting instruction from too many places. And I had to think about that. I had to sit myself down and go, could they be right? So there is truth in that. Like, some people will have one teacher and then focus on that. And then their growth is specific to whatever that teacher teaches them. And then whatever they do on the outside, right? Like self-learning or whatever. I don't know. I don't regret. I think that what I've done so far has worked for me. And I think that also there's a lot that I need to do still, But what I've done so far has allowed me to play in bands, to experience the whole, performing thing, the recording thing. I've done recordings and, led me to that radio show that I do now, which I love, and, I go to NAM every year now. I've been to, I think, 5 or 6 NAMs, the National Association of Music Merchants in California, where I go and I talk to musicians and I talk to bass players specifically, and go around and see, look at the new equipment that's coming out. And what's fascinating for me on my personal journey is every time I go, I find that I understand a little bit more. So when I'm talking to somebody who is showing me a product, I understand what that means now. Last year I didn't, I can now ask questions that I feel like, I'm asking these questions and they're engaging, which means that they think it's a valid question or worthy. You know what I'm saying? I know it sounds a little bit weird, but I can feel my growth, which is really an odd experience, and I'm loving it. You know what I mean? Like everything that I'm doing, every experience that I've taken, that I've jumped on, that I've been afraid of, maybe I've been going, oh my God, I can't do this. I've done and learned from, and what I'm finding is you get the learning from the oddest places you don't expect, so I'm on this journey. Yeah, that's where I'm going to leave that.
Yeah, that's a better way to think of that than feeling like you're missing that one, one thing. What Victor Wooten said to you about you've lived this whole time and you have experience and that informs your musicality. That's something really powerful that I think gets overlooked. And I think a lot of young musicians, and I think rightfully so, they focus on the chops earlier on. And then they eventually come full circle. And I feel there are some people that, I don't want to be too disrespectful to the genre of shred, because there's some stuff in there that I really love, but there's some stuff in there where you can tell they've taken a wrong turn and a path that they were meant to go down for a little while. They just kept going down there. And now they're somewhere that nobody wants to be with them, at least. Maybe they want to be there. Maybe they need to be there. But you'll get these people who just played straight 30-second note arpeggios, and it's not musically interesting, and there's no storytelling there. So who are some of your favorite storytellers on the instrument?
That's an interesting question. Well, I just find that as a musician, when you're not singing, when you don't have lyrics, I think to be called a storyteller or to be able to, communicate a story is more interesting, more challenging, more something. You know what I mean? Because I think that
it can almost become secondary. Like if you're keeping up the groove, you're playing stuff that's harmonically pleasing, that's enough sometimes. So to tell a story is to go above and beyond.
Right. So one of my favorite bass players is John Paul Jones. You know, John Paul Jones, his bass playing is, I mean, there's no question he has chops, right? His melodic lines are just beautiful and say so much. And he's like, even when you try to play them, the nuances that are there, only when you try to learn them do you really go, oh, wow. Oh, I see. So he's waiting just a little bit longer. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't fall exactly on the beat or there's a voice that he has. He has a voice.
Have you seen that? There's a video. It's just like handy cam footage. Someone went in and interviewed John Paul Jones in his trailer when he was playing some music festival. And one of the things he talks about there was practicing playing behind the beat and on top of the beat and dead on it, right? And he talks about the difference between a human player and a digital instrument and why he thinks that the human can never be completely replicated. Although people are constantly trying.
Right.
And succeeding more and more.
I know, scary.
Actually, Nathan Fleet fooled me. I was like, who played on your album? The drums sounded like the pocket there. And he's like, I composed those with, on like digital. But you can never really eliminate the human element completely because humans made the technology. It wouldn't be doing it on its own,
Yeah, I mean that's a tough question. That's a tough conversation because even as humans, when we record, we expect perfection. Oh, I made a mistake there. Can you fix it? Was
it really a mistake though?
Right. And I think that one of the things that today we enjoy so much about listening to, albums from the 70s or, the LPs that we listen to have mistakes, and it's part of what we like. We don't maybe call it that, but it's the human factor, right? And it's interesting because oftentimes back when people were learning from recordings from back then, they would go, oh, no, wait, he does this thing here. I have to replicate that thing. And it's like, well, maybe that thing was an error, and they don't replicate it on like stage live. Why would you work so hard to replicate that? And I think there's something to be said about listening to music that was created by other people that you're a fan of and being able to do it justice by, maybe doing a cover, but putting yourself into it and making it your own. I prefer, whenever I listen to a cover, I love listening to covers where people have injected themselves in it. I don't want to hear an exact replication of the original.
Because then you just listen to the original.
Exactly.
Of course. I was in a band. It was a 4-piece band, and with a lead singer. So it was the same Zeppelin setup, and we were the rhythm section. At least myself, the drummer, and the guitar player, were all obsessed with Led Zeppelin. The singer could hit all the notes. He didn't. He like his tone was obviously very different, and we didn't. We didn't sound like Zeppelin when we did Zeppelin, but we were obsessed with it, and we would dig up all of the, we would start learning a tune by all learning the recorded version, the official album version, and then we would delve into the bootlegs, and then you compose...
And all the live versions.
Exactly. So you start taking all these exciting lines and like copy and pasting this ultra exciting version that's authentic to the original or to the band rather. So instead, you're kind of bringing out this like live spirit of the band instead of just becoming a carbon copy of the recording.
Yeah.
And a lot of one of the things that was interesting about studying music in school was how all of the teachers kind of seemed to be working very hard to not say that they really thought that your time would have been better spent just lifting classic recordings and playing as many gigs as you can. You know what I mean? And then, have you ever met a musician who's completely trained, just kind of not even self-taught, but a more accurate way of saying it is taught by the greats? And
okay, yeah,
you know, like, they don't know any notes, but they know the language almost better than you do from knowing, like, having this book learned understanding of it. And sometimes it raises the question of, like, you know, should we?
Oh no, don't ask it. Don't do it. Okay, ask it. Go ahead.
You know what? Maybe it wasn't so much a question, but
well,
what were you afraid of me asking?
Whether music education should still be like a formal education should still be a pursuit.
Oh no, I wouldn't have a job then.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a very small percentage of people who are capable of just jumping into it and just failing their way to playing along with the masters. You know, I don't like.
Well,
I think 99% of people like need someone kind of being there, like, this is not
like
that scary. You can do this.
Yeah.
Like, here's the easiest thing that you can play really well. Because that's another thing. When, you know, like, when I started wanting to play music, I'd be like, you know, like, oh, I want to play this Primus song on bass. I want to play the Stairway to Heaven solo. I want to play, you know, and then it's like, but then you take that to someone and they're like, all right, here are the steps you need to take to get there.
right.
And sometimes those people can't, like, the people who do learn the other way, they almost can't be taught in a way. Like, they won't take it. You know, they're just like, no, let me do it. And they might even achieve the same result, but I think it's the long way around.
Yeah, I think that you know, maybe that's why I was saying don't say that question. You know, there are different philosophies when it comes to music education, right? And by education, I don't mean formal; I mean informal as well. And I know some people, for example, who say a university education in music is a waste of time, right? And the reason they say that is that they feel that what you're being taught is old stuff, right? Like history, like, you know, whatever, counterpoint, or, you know, the harmony from the classical era, whatever. Now, and they feel like you should just be taking private lessons. Take private lessons and then you can do whatever. But the thing is that even when you're going on your own journey and you decide not to take any lessons at all, right? And you're going to just listen to albums or whatever, you're going to listen to CDs or whatever your method is for getting new music, right? Repertoire. I think that there's a point where you got to go, do you understand what you're doing? And, you know, and some people don't need to understand, and that's fine. And what I'm saying is there are different objectives, right? So if you, for example, if we were to take language as, you know, as a
comparison.
Yeah, you know, like an analogy. You know, you could decide that you want to go to France and you're going to spend 3 weeks there. And all you really need to know are the expressions you're going to use to find out where the bathroom is, how to order a coffee, how to order a beer, you know, that kind of thing, right? And ask for directions. Or you could say, you know, let me learn the basics of the language. Let me learn the grammar rules, the basic grammar rules. And then when I go to France, I will have some vocabulary under my belt, but I will have the basics to understand as I'm there and I'm learning more. Oh yeah, right. The reason that, they said this word is because, it's the third person singular, whatever. It's the third person singular. Therefore, okay, so now I know that rule. So now when I'm about to say this other word, I know that if I apply the same rules, I'm going to make sense. More often than not, the other person's going to understand what I'm saying. Not because I'm fluent in the language, but because I know enough of the basic rules that I can fudge my way through it and build that way. And I think music is the same thing. Sometimes, somebody might just want to play that solo from Stairway to Heaven. Okay, well then learn that solo, right? But that's not going to necessarily help you create your own solo. It's not going to necessarily help you play a Bob Marley tune that maybe you're also interested in, And I think that, so music education is teaching you the basics, the rules, where it's come from, right? And sometimes you need to understand where it's come from to understand where we are today and to understand sort of where you want to take it. Some people want to do different things, completely different things. Well, how do you know it's different if you don't know what's been done before? And that's why a lot of people nowadays get into trouble. Like, oh, look, they're so original. No, they're not. They're, that's been done in the 70s or in the 60s or, and people hear that a lot and they're disappointed. Well, okay, but if you listened to the music in the past, you would understand, how we got to where we are today.
Totally agree with that. Yeah. And yeah, I think there is this big misconception that I find a lot of people fall into where they say like, I don't want like learning covers is a waste of time. So that's your history as a musician, right? You shouldn't play covers because you need to find your own thing and make art or something. It's like you said, how are you going to know that you're not just doing something that was
right.
done in the 40s or 60s or
right.
even earlier, and you're just too ignorant
right.
to be like, oh, I don't hear this on the radio. It's like, yeah, that's because it's been done so long ago that people are over it.
Right.
But then again, that could catch on and maybe just
it's a comeback.
Yeah, exactly.
But then they'll be surprised that it's a comeback and it's not a, new and,
yeah.
Innovative thing. But I think, I just want to touch on that point for a second, this thing, this belief that covers are a waste of time from a learning perspective. I've flipped and flopped over that one because, as I said, I'm on this journey, right? And so I'm depending on where I am, I see the same thing in different ways. So in the sense of covers, there was a time when I was learning songs, right? Just learning songs. And mostly I was learning songs because somebody else asked me to learn those songs. So whether it was in a band setting or, whatever. And I'd be like, why am I learning this song? I don't want to learn the song. I don't want to play the song. I have no interest in, this particular song, whatever. But what I realized afterwards, after I broke my butt trying to learn the song, is I learned techniques that I would not have learned before on my own. I would not have thought to learn on my own because I didn't know it was a thing. But playing that cover, learning that cover, what I found was I am learning, as you said earlier, I'm learning from the greats. If I were just looking at a chord progression and doing my own thing, I would always play within my toolkit. Playing covers and learning them the way the original bass player, in our case, the original bass player played it. Now I'm accessing his toolkit or her toolkit. Right? And now I'm going, oh, wait, what did she do there? What did he do there? Let me figure out how that was done. And now I'm going, oh, okay, so now I can apply those somewhere else, right? So I've gone from, I don't want to learn covers anymore, I want to do original music, I want to do whatever, to, man, every time I play original music, every time I do my own thing, I'm not growing because I'm not accessing, I don't know what I don't know sometimes, right?
Yes.
And I go back to learning. So I did a cover, we were in a cover band for Led Zeppelin. Actually, it was a charity event that I did, and our lead singer was a woman. She was awesome.
I saw some videos of that.
Oh, did you?
I wish I were there.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. And they were deep cuts, some of them. And so, like, music I had never heard of before. I had not heard these songs before. And so learning those and then realizing, oh, wow, there's no way in hell I can do that. So let me do this instead, right? This is something that I can do. And it's still within the spirit of the song, etc. Those even those decisions are a learning experience. You know what I mean? And then every time I listen to the original, I'm like, oh wow, okay, now I can access that. When I first started, I couldn't play this, but now I can. So I incorporate more and more of, in this case, John Paul Jones's original stuff, right? So I think that there's a huge value in learning cover songs. I just think that it helps if A, you're interested in the song, and B, you're picking and choosing songs. I don't think it's, if you hate the song, it's kind of like, it's not inspiring, but you know, but
sometimes you end up liking it by the end of it.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
When you see what puts that together.
Yes.
And you go, okay, maybe this isn't for me, but other people like it.
Yes.
And this right here is why. And now that's something that you have, and then you can kind of like connect with this thing that previously you didn't enjoy.
Totally. So like genres, that happens in entire genres, like the 90s alternative rock. During the 90s, I was not really into it, to me, it was a little bit like too much angst, right?
Chris Novoselic is one bass player who I could not stand in high school. I'm like, why is he so boring? And now, like, I look up to him.
Right?
I'm like, dude, how did you never play any fills? That's incredible. And like, could you imagine Nirvana with like bass fills all over the place? Sorry to cut you off.
No, exactly.
That's just where my mind went.
Yeah, and somebody like Bootsy Collins, Bootsy Collins, when he was playing with James Brown, was like, a lot of it was repetitive. It was, ostinatos, just the same thing throughout the entire song. And you and I know how hard that is. Especially, they didn't have Pro Tools.
Yeah.
They
couldn't play it just the one time and like, all right, your session's done. We're just gonna
we're gonna copy
this
paste
46
exactly.
times.
Yeah. So you get it really, you get a totally different perspective and new respect. Back to the 90s stuff, when I started with this other band, we were doing covers. They all wanted to do 90s rock because the singer was just perfect for it, had the perfect voice for it. And they played all these songs that I didn't know, and I definitely didn't know as a musician. And oh my God, at the end of learning, the 6 or 7, or I think we got up to like 9 songs for this gig, I was, totally into, I want to learn more Stone Temple Pilots. I want to learn more, it was just...
Big Empty. Did you do that one?
No.
Oh, that bass player just in general is great, but that's, I think, one of my favorite bass lines of his. And when you watch their Unplugged series, it's all, it's not like rock and roll, like those guys were a jazz band. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it's like that was a good take, and they used it. And then when they played it live, they all did something very different.
Mm-hmm.
Same deal with Zeppelin. And
right, yeah. And
I think even with the kind of crossing over of styles, like if you're familiar with Motown music, you'll see that like John Paul Jones is just, like injecting James Jamerson lines into blues rock.
And it's a beautiful thing.
It's incredible. And then you take, what you learned from John Paul Jones, and then you put it into like a less chordy, slower thing, and then that becomes Pearl Jam, right? Jeff Ament, right? And then, you take that and you, put a low B string on it, and now that's new metal, right? And then it just keeps evolving.
That's interesting. But yeah, that's the big thing about working on covers is you do learn so much. There's a lot of opportunity there.
How much do you guys study the evolution of music in like and I don't mean evolution of like music as we know it, but I mean, I saw a TED Talks, for instance, once where someone talks about finding what we understand as musical patterns, like what has now become music, but things in nature. So when this person in general was talking about an African bird who sings with the pentatonic scale. Mm-hmm. And have you seen that one?
No.
Or heard of that? Mm-mm. And it's extremely quick. It sounds like, to the untrained ear, and to, even the trained ear, it's just like it's a chirp. But then they slow it down and bring the pitch down.
Okay.
And it's a full, like, pentatonic lick.
Oh, that's funny.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you're in a world without television, without distractions, and you hear this bird chirp, you have the time to dissect that and then bring that down to like the human tempo, right? Mm-hmm. And same deal with if you've ever there's this thing I saw where someone took crickets chirping in a field. You've heard that one?
Mm-mm. No.
They slow it down, and it's harmonically beautiful. It's so dense, and it's not, there's no, like, if you just take a series of random noises, they will not line up like that.
Well, the thing about, so to answer your question, we talk a little bit about the history of music, and from a evolutionary perspective, or more like ask the questions, right? Because I guess the paradox with history is that while it informs the future, there is no way to absolutely say for certain what the history was. You can only look at clues and deduce what happened in history. I'm whistling. Look, did you hear that?
Yeah. That's cool. There's a cartoon character who does that. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
It's a guy from DuckTales. I'm almost sure of it. Sorry.
That's okay.
But,
no, I was like, hey,
see that's a sound taking me back to my past. It's actually one of my favorite things to say to young students. Sometimes I'll say, I used to watch DuckTales on Betamax.
Wow.
And that sentence is so archaic that not a single word of it makes sense.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Sorry, back to
history, evolution. So they are asking questions about how did we first, quote unquote, discover music, right? And part of the questions that they ask is things like, are there any other animals in nature that would you consider that music? Do they sing? Do they engage in entertaining sounds, right? So not, I'm going to whistle and that means that I'm looking for a mate. Or I'm going to whistle and therefore I'm looking, there's danger, right? Because what they're finding is with a lot of the bird species, it's not singing, it's more about communicating messages, right? And they're repetitive and they're pretty limited. There are, however, things, birds like mynah birds and so I guess, some parakeets, or maybe not parakeets, cockatoos. They have a larger vocabulary. And those birds tend to also have rhythm. Or they find, have you ever seen, what is that YouTube video? Snowball? The white, I don't know what kind of bird it is.
I've seen a lot of parrots on YouTube doing it. I'm sure I saw.
Okay, so this one is a white bird, and
there's one who sings "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor."
Okay, no, I haven't seen that one.
It's awesome.
But every time the person plays different music, the bird will start bouncing up and down and nodding their head and moving across the bar in time. So people were asking, okay, can Snowball really listen to music and hear rhythm and follow rhythm? Because most animals that have been studied cannot. And what they found was, yeah, something's happening with Snowball. and they've done enough tests that it's not one of those, hints like the talking horse or whatever, math, whatever. Sorry. We study animals, and we study studies that have, like misled people into believing that, animals are capable of different human or have human traits or characteristics. And so they look at that and they go, no, this was debunked because of this. This was debunked because of that. Snowball seems to have survived so far. Like they're going, yeah, the snowball seems to have a sense of rhythm. And so what they found was that, yes, birds that can sing, that actually have that vocabulary, that can mimic human speech, those kind of birds seem to have a wider sense of music, rhythm, that they would burst into song. I don't know, but all of that to say is that these are the kind of things that people are studying to see where we as a species may have gotten music from. And the one thing that they can say is things like the pentatonic scale. We're talking about sound frequencies. We're talking about harmonics, right? What's dissonant, what's consonant. And one of the things that I personally studied in one of my history classes, which was like ancient history, you find that our music in the world, from a human species perspective, has been largely influenced by religion. Because for the longest time, music, there's two ways of looking at music. One is you could look at it from a rhythmic perspective, which was, as far back as you could look, there's people beating on things, right?
Yeah.
And we want to call that music because it is. It's rhythmic. It's planned. It's, something that we move to. It's something that is entertaining to us. It's something that we feel, whatever. So, and there's a purpose for it. When it comes to the other type of music, melodic music, a lot of that started with singing, right? Vocal. And there was a time where, and again, see, I'm very cautious about this because it's history. We don't know what else was going on. All we know is what was documented, right? Yes. We don't know what else was happening in other parts of the world. But we do know that for a long time, there was a thing where only priests could sing and engage in music, right? So there's a lot of the written evidence tends to be in that space. And they had a lot of rules because everything was to please God or to, don't do this, it's going to anger God, or, this is the devil. Like, dissonance was considered evil, Yeah. And so everybody was going, well, consonance is frequencies that are in mostly whole numbers, right? Anytime you take one sound frequency and you put it with another sound frequency that is close, but not like they're an odd fraction kind of thing in terms of ratio, it'll sound bad to us because they don't gel nicely. They don't.
So what could possibly be the evolutionary explanation for that sounding bad as opposed to sounding good? Like you could say that this rub of a just out of tune, like an out of tune same note. Mm-hmm. Like that's a very potent sound, potent feeling. Mm-hmm. Like why is that not like, oh, I like that?
I think so. Again, I think we go back to the brain. What the brain is comfortable with, what a person can get used to, because dissonance over time has changed. What we used to consider dissonant is no longer dissonant for us because our generation is used to and comfortable with hearing things that rub.
Yes.
We're not as offended by it. Whereas, early on, things had to be very far apart. Like it had to be a perfect fifth apart or a perfect fourth apart or an octave apart. give me those big spaces.
Right, like
and
Gregorian chants.
Yeah.
Whatever, the harmony is very basic.
And a lot of that was, if I look at it now, and this is just my speculation now, right? This is when I study neuroscience and I study how the frequencies, like I was explaining in the cochlear, right, inside your ear, when the frequencies are far enough apart, it's very clear. Your brain knows exactly what's going on. It's very happy. It's like, okay, this is cool. When they're too close together, then you have the vibrations that occur. And now it's like your brain's not sure, like, okay, well, is this frequency or is this that frequency? And so it's kind of like when you're listening to you're tuning a string and it's just out of tune, that wave you get, that warble. That
was what I was describing. Like, why isn't that the thing we like?
Yeah, I think it's simplicity. I think that our brain just likes things that are clear. Like, okay, no, this is smooth, this is warbly. Okay, I'm going to go for smooth. And I think that that'd be interesting, though. What if we all went after warbly?
Well, because there's like Indian music has those intentional quarter tones, right? But also that's the appeal of that, I think, is the fact that it goes away and comes back.
Totally, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
so it's still the same idea of going to like a mild level of discomfort and getting back there.
And I think that's a good point because again, when I looked at the history, right, that has been documented, one of the complaints or one of the criticisms is that it is Western. It's Western music, right? And as I said before, there's music that was happening elsewhere in Asia, in Africa, and whatever that maybe has not been documented as well. And to your point, I think that based on our brain likes what's familiar, and if what's familiar is warbly, then that's what we're going to like. If it's not, if what we're insisting on has to be smooth, then that's what we're going to like.
There's those videos that people post with like the this is the snowflake that formed listening to Bach, and this is the one listening to I Hate You on a loop, or this pattern in like a gelatinous goop was created by 134 hertz or whatever that supposedly magic frequency is. What's the deal with that?
I don't know.
You're not
these snowflakes? No, I don't know.
The ugly snowflakes, right? I'll
have to look into that.
What about that? Was it 434? A 434 frequency?
Yeah.
Is there like a scientific relevance to that frequency that?
I've read some on that. I do not have a conclusion. I'm curious myself. What would happen if we changed all our music? Could we tell a difference? Would it?
Maybe
make a
that's
difference?
the only thing standing between us and world peace.
Possibly. Yeah, I don't know.
My friend had a conspiracy theory that it was the Nazis that tuned everything up 6
to
hertz.
Stress everybody out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just because they were, like they liked round numbers and the orderliness of 440 instead of 434 was
or whatever that number was.
Desirable.
I don't remember what it was.
Yeah. But that there is this kind of like, I can never. I've heard 444 too, and I don't know. Do you ever like secretly hope like we don't ever map it all? Like that it, or we get to a point where it's like, oh, we literally can't explain this. We've run all the tests a million times, and like,
yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Absolutely,
it's magic.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. The mystical part of music, the even the surprise and awe that you feel when somebody can do incredible things with music, and maybe they're not as adept in other things in their lives, but they start playing music and it's just like they blow you away. And how do you explain that? Well, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should just let it be what it is, you know?
But it's, but then you do explain some of it and it just becomes more magical. You know, you shed a light on this and then it just reveals all these extra pathways that you're just like, oh, there's this much more to discover. And even with us deriving music from nature, potentially, these scales and harmonic frequencies, it almost seems to dictate that there's kind of an orderliness to life in our world that's kind of predetermined by these formulas that are...
So a lot of people want to kind of focus on that. But I think, I can't remember, one of the courses I took, they analyzed all the different scales in the world. From, well, I shouldn't say all, the ones that they knew about. And there are differences, right, in what frequencies they choose to include in their scale. The one constant seems to be the octave. Everybody...
Not even the fifth?
I think a lot of people, a lot of cultures use the fifth. I think it was very, very strong. Not as strong as the octave, but yes, it was definitely up there. The third's less, like it's...
Because that's like a naturally existing overtone. Like if
Exactly.
you play a note, you will also hear the octave, and like the fifth is in there too. So it's like a lot of the existing scales are derived from just the way sound exists.
Right. It's an interesting question. It's an interesting... I don't know how they're going to solve this, because I think one of the challenges that... they're called ethnomusicologists.
Right.
One of the challenges is everybody comes with their own bias based on, what they've been exposed to, what they've grown up with, what they understand. And, if you're studying another culture's music, it's still another culture, right? It's how well you understand it is how well you understand it.
Your understanding of it will always be in relation to the understanding of your own culture's music.
Yeah, and understanding where they're coming from, and somebody's got to explain that to you, and how well they explain it to you is, you know what I mean? Like it's not that simple. It's complex. So I think it's going to be a challenge, but and especially nowadays with music crossing over so many boundaries. You do find a lot of crossovers, partly because of, things like the internet, right? So somebody who has never left their country can still be exposed and influenced by another culture's music.
Show.
It'll be 2 years in July. So
nice.
Yeah, over a year and a half.
Yeah, I catch that on the radio sometimes. It's on 93.3, right?
Yes.
And CFMU?
Yeah, very good.
In the basement, 93.3 CFMU. What?
Yeah, out of the basement.
Times?
It's out of the basement.
I have failed.
No, that's good. You did well there.
Out of the basement.
Yeah, and basement is spelled BASSMENT, which throws a lot of people off, especially when they're trying to send me emails, because autocorrect will correct.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, so they do the right thing, but then...
Yeah, but then autocorrect will just change it, and then I don't get the emails, and then it's...
Oh,
boo.
Brutal.
Yeah, sorry. What was your question? I got distracted.
No, I just wanted to bring attention to the show as we
it's Monday.
begin to... It's Monday?
Mondays from 2 to 3 Eastern Time. It does stream. So it's on 93.3 FM, and you can hear it in Hamilton and Burlington and Oakville and I think Brantford. And then it streams online at cfmu.ca.
Cool.
So I've got listeners all over the world. Yay. Because I play bass players from all over the world.
That's awesome. That's, you know what, that show needs to exist. And I think it's tough. The more music gets consumed on these things, I'm holding up my phone, the more that half of music gets lost. And that's the half that moves you and envelops you, and it's amazing that you're shining a spotlight on that, because all the stuff you play, you're not going to hear it on mainstream radio.
No.
Or even anything like it, because it is the stuff that it bends the rules and it goes into those kind of more taboo places. There's the sound that is expected from all music to get on the radio and be palatable, and not just instantly, stick out and frighten advertisers and whatever. It's become so homogenous to the point where even I find myself, if I listen to the radio for a long time, I get kind of like lulled into that zone where it's weird when something doesn't sound like that. And I think people need to explore musically outside of their comfort zone and get some good speakers or decent headphones, or better yet, see a live show.
Oh, definitely.
Pay attention
most definitely
to what that person in the back with the 4 strings is doing.
Or 5 or 6.
Or 5 or 6. or the how do you feel about when people what if it's not a guitar? What if the bass frequency is being provided by a keyboard? Is that cool too? Is that still bass?
Yeah, I mean, they call that keyboard bass, but I personally, I guess because I'm a bass player, I would rather it be done by a bass player.
Would you play someone who plays a C-board, but he only plays one note at a time, but they identify as a bass player? Where's the cutoff for in the basement of what's not bass anymore? Have you found that line yet?
No. So for example, on Out of the Basement, I play... It's okay. I play this one band that I discovered from Calgary. And of course now I'm going to forget their name. Anyways, there's 2 bass players, 2 drummers. And it's heavy music, but it's not what you would consider heavy metal. It's literally, there's no guitars, there's no keyboards, there's, Solid Brown, that's what they're called. Solid Brown.
Solid Brown?
Yeah. And the first time I looked at it, I was like, are you kidding me? I need to listen to this. And, they call it avant. It's like avant-garde, right? Music.
Yeah.
It's like avant or alternative. And it's interesting. And I find that today, see, somebody had tossed it aside at the station. We get all kinds of music at the station, right? People send in all kinds of music. And I only get stuff directly to me if the person puts my name on it. If they put, attention Keiko Out of the Basement, then I will get it and I will look at it and I will listen to it and, play, and then I can play it on my show. This particular CD did not make it to my show. It was in the sort of general pile that comes in that, people listen to. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but it was rejected. It had gone to the reject pile. Now, the reason being that it's not conventional. It's not, not that CFMU is a conventional station, right? CFMU, by being a university type station, it's a community station, whatever. Its goal is to not play mainstream music. Okay. So, but this particular music was, I guess, a little too out there for the person that was listening to it. And what fascinated me was when I listened to it, I was like, my mind was just open to it, right? And that's a new thing for me. That's, like I told you, in the 90s, I was not listening to alternative rock because I thought it was angst, right? It was now my new ears, my new brain goes, oh yeah, like, wow, this is a great bass line. Or yeah, this is really cool. I see things as a musician now. And so when I was listening to the Solid Brown album, I was like, wow, this is really cool that these guys are doing this. And, they're singing. So, in a sort of angst way, I suppose. But, and the music is very, of course, rhythmic and groove heavy. So, it's, anyways, I appreciated it. And all I'm saying is that while I may play that on my show, the majority of the stuff that I play are more, melodic I'll play the fusion, I'll play the rock, I'll even play classical. There's a guy that plays classical bass, and there's a guy that's influenced by Indian music, for example. And all these guys are mixing genres, right? Playing with stuff. But I will also every once in a while play mainstream kind of pop stuff if the band leader is a bass player. So I play all genres. I don't have any limits there. The one thing is that it has to be focused or featuring the bass player. And what I like about what's happened is that people are surprised by the type of music I play. They weren't sure. They thought it was going to be all slapping, and they thought it was going to be all, that kind of stuff. Chops heavy and whatever. No, it's not. There is some of that, but there's so much music out there being created. Like, for example, in the jazz, I guess you could call it jazz fusion, Snarky Puppy.
Yeah.
Have you heard of them?
Yep.
So, they're really popular right now. Why? Because the musicians are at such high levels playing together. They, it's like they're really causing a wave in the scene, right? And the lead is Michael League, who is a bass player. That's the guy that put everybody together. That's the guy that drives everything. And so they get played on my show. When you think about it, think people like the Police.
Yeah. The Beatles.
The Beatles. Yeah, there's so much. And, in the case of John Paul Jones, well, I'll play Led Zeppelin if that particular song, like Ramble On, has such a strong bass feature.
Great bass line.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the show.
Amazing. All right. Thank you for joining me here.
Thank you for having me. This was really cool. I didn't know what to expect. I'm like, we're going to be sitting there staring at each other because I have nothing to say.
Yeah. Like I said, turned out you're more interesting than you thought you were. Keiko Gutierrez. Am I saying that remotely correctly?
Yeah.
You're cringing a little bit.
No.
I did my best. Out of the Basement.
Yes, thank you.
Mondays on 93.3 CFMU or the internet. Listen to it.
CFMU.ca.
CFMU.ca, exactly. Don't just go to the internet. It's better that you direct them to the website.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Thank you.